You're right guys, if you've seen my last few videos by any chance, then you'll know that Toolstop and DeWalt had the great idea of doing some projects to raise money for the Birmingham Children's Hospital. Now, because I've spent a lot of time in there myself, it's actually up to me to make the projects. So this is going to be the final charity project, for now anyway, and hopefully you really like it. I'm going to be making a Riverbed coffee table. Like my other charity projects, this one starts with 18mm plywood. The first job was to cut 3cm wide strips to 35cm in length. Using a stop block made the process a lot easier and quicker. Okay, not that quick, but you get the idea. These pieces get glued up to form a square. Each layer overlaps the other to form a finger joint. I built up 6 layers for each leg, so that was 48 pieces altogether. With the glue drying on the legs, I could turn my attention to the walnut for the top. I wanted to create a riverbank look, so on the edges I marked a rough curvy line with a pencil. Then with a jigsaw tilted to 30 degrees, I cut to the line. I used the offcut piece to trace round so the other side would match the curve. In order to fix the panel to the underside of the walnut, I needed to route a rebate, so I added a guide fence to the router and used the straight edge as a reference to guide the bit. With the straight line established, I could freehand the rest of the material away. The rebate allows a 6mm piece of plywood to fit flush into the bottom. I marked round the edges for a guide where to paint. I then masked off the rest with painter's tape and painted the centre. The tape will keep a clean area for glue to adhere to later. I gave it 2 coats of spray lacquer so it would be less likely to react to the resin. With that dry, I could glue it into place. Screws hold it down while the glue dries. Being a riverbed table, I wanted some pebbles for the bottom. I got some fish tank pebbles and washed them ready to put in the tabletop. This project is to help raise money for the Birmingham Children's Hospital. I've been incorporating their logo into each project, so this one will be a larger stone painted red like the balloon. I went ahead and clamped on some melamine to the edges to keep the resin in place while it sets. Hot glue makes a great temporary seal. Then it was just a case of arranging the stones to look nice. I made sure to keep a gap with no stones by the edge in case I needed to cut it later. I also bought some decorative moss to add to the table. Using a flat block, I made sure everything was below the tabletop. The final touch was to add a penny, just for a bit of interest. The resin I used needed to be mixed to a ratio of 1 to 1/2. I mixed it thoroughly before pouring it. You can only pour 2 litres at a time with this resin, so I had to wait 3 days before it was hard enough to pour the next layer. The resin is self-degassing, so it has next to no bubbles when it's fully set. That's why it takes so long. It's well worth the wait. While the second layer is drying, I created a pocket in the top of the legs. This will accept a piece of plywood that will be glued to the underside of the table. I drilled a couple of holes all the way through the block and the legs. I then created recesses using a spade bit. This allows a T-nut to be fitted flush. A washer taped to a clamp works great at squeezing the T-nut into place. Machine screws can now be used to attach the legs to the tabletop. With the resin set, I could remove the melamine from the edges. Whoops, that wasn't supposed to happen. Good job I left that gap with no pebbles at the edge. The track saw makes quick work of cleaning up the edges. I overfilled the top and thought a planer would speed up the job of levelling it. First mistake, it took some huge chips out of the surface, so I refilled them and went to sanding. With it sanded to 1200 grit, I decided to work on the bottom next. I shouldn't have painted the bottom as I needed to fill the edges and also remove the paint for the glue to adhere to, so with that done I masked off the bottom and painted it again. I love the sharp edge I managed to get on this. I glued on the blocks with the T-nuts onto the bottom of the tabletop. I decided to paint the edge of the legs black to make the exposed edges stand out more. The top was looking great at 1200 grit, but I decided to go back and polish it using rotten stone powder. I mixed it with water and tried a test area. I was pleased with the result, so I polished it all over. Now it's time to add finish to everything. The satin polyurethane looked great on the underside of the tabletop and the plywood legs. It even looked really clear on the resin, but the brush marks were awful. The resin really shows them up, so I sanded it all back down and tried some spray polyurethane. Again, I used the satin polyurethane thinking it would look clear like the brush on stuff, but without the brush marks. I was wrong. The additives in the satin finish make the resin cloudy, so I sanded it again. Finally, I used some gloss spray polyurethane, which turned out great. With 4 hours drying time between each coat, you can imagine I was relieved to give it its final coat. And this is the result of all that work. Well worth it in my opinion. It's for a fantastic cause, so I hope you all like it. I'll put a link to the other charity projects on the screen. As soon as I have the information about the auctions and everything like that, I'll release a dedicated video telling you all about it. Thank you all for watching.